Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to find out who Elementor is. Among the most impressive, unsettling, and captivating antagonists in the vast universe of Max Steel, Elementor stands as one of the most memorable and complex villains ever conceived. His presence is striking from the very first moment. An imposing humanoid silhouette with features eerily reminiscent of the deadliest reptiles, covered in scales, with eyes that seem to burn with sinister intelligence. Yet Elementor is not simply a powerful creature. He is a direct clone of the fearsome bioconstrictor, a perfected and enhanced replica designed not only to emulate his strength, but to push the boundaries of biology and physics. What transforms him into a unique and terrifying entity is the infusion of Elementium, an extremely rare and almost legendary energy capable of granting him absolute control over the four primary elements of nature: water, fire, earth, and air. But his power doesn't stop there. Elementor has developed the ability to manipulate complex derivatives of these elements, raising his threat level to something nearly divine. He can generate and channel electricity, shape metals at will, create ice from thin air, and even manipulate large-scale natural phenomena. Each confrontation with him is not merely a physical clash, but a strategic challenge where the survival of the planet hangs by a thread. His raw strength is only one component. The true danger lies in his absolute command over the forces of nature, capable of reshaping entire ecosystems in seconds. As an exact replica of Bioconstrictor, Elementor inherited not only the brute strength of his progenitor, but also his superior intellect, his memory, and his darkest obsessions. This connection explains his dangerous fixation on merging with the Earth itself, an objective that seeks not power or domination, but absolute purification. A planet free of all contamination, stripped of life, returned to a primordial state before the existence of any living beings. His mission is so radical that, if accomplished, it would mean the extinction of all life. This is the reason why Max Steel is forced to confront him. Stopping Elementor is not just a heroic act, but a struggle for the very survival of humanity and the planet itself. In this video, we'll dive deep into the complete history of the original Elementor, whose first appearance dates back to 2004, exploring every aspect of his anatomy, character, and behavior, while examining how all these traits intertwine with his supernatural abilities, making him an iconic antagonist feared by generations of fans. To fully understand Elementor's origin, we must return to the isotope experiments developed by ENTEC, the scientific corporation behind his darkest secrets. The story of Bioconstrictor is intrinsically tied to that of Elementor. Their destinies are irreversibly intertwined, like two sides of the same threat. In a world where pollution levels had reached a critical point, ENTEC launched an ambitious project to discover a clean, renewable, and completely safe source of energy. From these investigations came the special isotopes, each linked to one of the four primary elements of nature: water, fire, earth, and air. What was extraordinary about these isotopes was their ability to function independently, but when combined, their power multiplied exponentially, producing phenomena ranging from electricity generation to metal manipulation and ice creation. However, this combination proved extremely unstable. To attempt to control such power, ENTEC scientists created a fifth isotope, called Elementium, designed specifically to stabilize the other four. But the experiment failed catastrophically. Instead of balancing the elements, the Elementium amplified their volatility, turning them into an uncontrollable force. The project was cancelled, and Elementium was declared a hazardous, nearly unmanageable substance. Its destructive potential surpassed all expectations. It could not be destroyed, only transformed, and any attempt to manipulate it without proper preparation posed a lethal risk. In an effort to minimize the danger, Max Steel's father, then the leader of ENTEC, made the decision to disperse the 4 isotopes across different regions of the planet. Keeping them together represented too great a risk, especially if they fell into the wrong hands. Even Elementium shared this property. Indestructible and eternally mutable, it could be harnessed for creation or destruction, depending on the intelligence and will of whoever controlled it. In this context, there exists an even rarer and more valuable substance known as anti-Elementium, directly connected to the creation of Elementium, though its existence is extremely limited, tiny crystals scattered across the globe. Returning to the origins of Bioconstrictor, we find that behind his monstrous appearance was the brilliant yet radical scientist, Dr. David Climeth. His obsession with global threats and his extreme mindset led him to experiment with snakes, reptiles, amphibians, and arachnids, seeking to create biological weapons based on these species. His unpredictable and dangerous behavior resulted in his expulsion from Entech, but it did not stop him from pursuing his secret, sinister plans. Climeth aspired to destroy the planet in order to rebuild it according to his vision, using the venomous creatures he so revered. Climeth's fate changed in a tragic and grotesque way when he accidentally fell into an experimental formula that combined toxins from multiple lethal species. The metamorphosis that followed was horrifying. His body transformed into a reptilian entity composed almost entirely of intertwined serpents, giving birth to Bioconstrictor, a unique and terrifying villain whose existence would prove decisive for the later emergence of Elementor. After undergoing that drastic and grotesque transformation, Bioconstrictor felt that he had reached a higher level of evolution, a stage in which he no longer considered himself human, nor merely a monster, but an entity with a cosmic purpose, to rewrite the world in his own image and vision. Immersed in absolute madness and obsessions bordering on megalomania, he firmly and unquestioningly believed that his newfound abilities, combined with his absolute control over the venomous reptiles he had gathered and enhanced, finally granted him the power he needed to execute his darkest plan, to destroy the world in order to rebuild it from scratch, purified and free of all imperfection. Every thought Bioconstrictor had was infused with this conviction, and every move he made was a meticulous calculation toward that ultimate goal. However, no matter how powerful he felt, his ambitions encountered a formidable barrier: Max Steel. The hero managed to face him on multiple occasions, thwarting his plans and forcing him to retreat every time he seemed on the verge of victory. Each defeat was a blow to his ego, but also a catalyst for his twisted ingenuity. Bioconstrictor realized that to surpass Max, he needed to evolve beyond his original form. His next step was to create clones of himself, obsessively experimenting with the fusion of his human and reptilian DNA, incorporating toxins and venoms in precise amounts, and recalling the existence of the powerful isotopes and Elementium as potential sources of amplification. His goal was clear: to develop a being that would not only inherit his intellect and strength, but also command the elements of nature. The first attempts were an absolute failure. The initial clones were unstable. The water isotope, chosen by Bioconstrictor, caused uncontrollable fluctuations in their bodies, preventing them from maintaining a coherent form. Some exploded into grotesque mutations, others slowly decomposed inside their incubation tubes, and all died without fulfilling the purpose for which they had been created. Yet Bioconstrictor's obstinacy was as formidable as his ambition. Day after day, he adjusted formulas, modified genetic structures, and perfected toxins, until finally, after countless failures, one of the clones managed to stabilize. It was the first to successfully fuse with the water isotope and with Elementium. This success marked a turning point in his experiment. In total, Bioconstrictor developed 7 clones, but only one survived, Elementor. The rest, unable to withstand the volatility of Elementium, perished in silence, trapped in their incubators, reduced to mere victims of the scientists' ambition. Elementor, on the other hand, emerged as a being of extreme mutations, gigantic, muscular, and formidable, with sharp claws ending in reptilian hands and feet, and an elongated skull that gave him a monstrous, unsettling appearance. A glowing sphere formed on his forehead, channeling the elemental power that resided within him, and his mouth, a colossal slit, was filled with 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth that evoked the ferocity of ancient predators. Every detail of his anatomy radiated danger, intelligence, and a terrifying presence capable of imposing itself on any foe. It seemed as though Bioconstrictor's work had been sealed by fate when Psycho, another formidable villain in the Max Steel universe, ended the scientist's life. The laboratories, filled with experiments and incomplete clones, were abandoned, leaving unfinished the legacy of a mad genius. However, the story was far from over. Years later, a military team, accompanied by Entech and led by Jefferson, arrived to explore the forgotten laboratories. What seemed like a routine inspection turned catastrophic when one of the soldiers, thinking he was simply turning on the lights, accidentally activated a switch that released Elementor. In a matter of seconds, the clone broke free from all his restraints, emerging with a roar that made the walls of the laboratory tremble, awakening with full awareness of himself. Jefferson soon realized that he was not facing a simple monster. Elementor was conscious, intelligent, and capable of reasoning, planning, and communicating. Moreover, he retained all of Bioconstrictor's memories, inheriting his intellect, scientific knowledge, and original goal to purify Earth of all imperfection. Yet Elementor was even more dangerous than his progenitor. He did not rely on snakes or venomous animals, but wielded the pure power of the elements of nature, mastering water, fire, air, and earth with lethal precision. With the water isotope under his control, Elementor wasted no time in flooding the laboratory, mercilessly attacking Jefferson and showcasing the scale of his power. Thanks to the inherited memories, he could locate the other isotopes without assistance, an advantage that made him unstoppable. Every move was calculated, every attack was strategic, and every obstacle he faced only served to prove that he was one step closer to completing his ultimate goal. Jefferson survived the initial assault, but was left trapped, powerless before the elemental force he himself had helped unleash, while Elementor began his lethal path toward the conquest of the remaining 4 isotopes, and with them, absolute control over the elements and the destiny of Earth. Fortunately, the man manages to survive Elementor's devastating attack, though barely aware of the scale of the force he has just witnessed. Every fragment of destruction, every wave of energy unleashed by the creature, made it clear that facing him was no ordinary battle, but a challenge that could alter the fate of humanity itself. After his escape, Elementor relocates to an isolated cavern, hidden deep within a remote mountain range. There, far from prying eyes and the interference of Max Steel, he succeeds in locating and absorbing the Earth isotope, integrating it into his very essence and elevating his power to extraordinary levels. The ground itself seemed to resonate under his control, becoming an ally that amplified his strength and endurance. Fueled by this new source of energy, Elementor wastes no time in showcasing the magnitude of his threat. A group of unsuspecting tourists, enjoying the natural surroundings, suddenly become witnesses to his unleashed fury. Massive rocks rise from the ground, walls of earth surge upward, and the air fills with dust and fragments as the creature demonstrates his mastery over the elements. Every movement of Elementor is a terrifying spectacle. His muscular, reptilian body glows with the elemental energy coursing through his veins, and his roar thunders like a storm, heralding imminent catastrophe. It doesn't take long before Max Steel arrives at the scene. Determined and leaving no room for error, the hero directly confronts Elementor. Thanks to his intensive training, superhuman agility, and specialized equipment, Max manages to inflict damage on the monster, causing him to shatter into multiple fragments. However, Elementor's regenerative ability is astonishing. Each fragment reassembles within seconds, restoring his body and returning his power as if nothing had happened. Max watches in concern as his adversary rebuilds himself, fully aware that the battle has only just begun. Realizing that he has not yet reached his true potential, Elementor decides to retreat strategically. He knows that in order to defeat Max Steel and achieve his goal of global destruction, he must grow even stronger. For weeks, he travels across different regions of the planet, first absorbing the fire isotope, triggering eruptions and flames that consume everything in their path, and then the air isotope, generating hurricanes and storms that seem to defy the very laws of physics. Each absorption transforms him into an increasingly unstoppable force, bringing him dangerously close to his ultimate goal. The Elementium, the fifth and most powerful isotope. Through his observations and the memories inherited from Bioconstrictor, Elementor deduces that the Elementium is being kept inside Entech's facilities. His suspicions are confirmed when he notices Jefferson's unease and sees how Berto and Kat are sent by the corporation to halt his advance. Determined to obtain it at all costs, Elementor destroys the facilities with unprecedented violence, and upon coming into contact with rusted machinery, he partially fuses with the surrounding metal, further increasing his strength and destructive capacity. It is at this critical moment that Berto makes a crucial discovery. Just like Bioconstrictor before him, Elementor does not fully understand the risks of combining all 5 isotopes. He ignores just how unstable and catastrophic they can be, and that ignorance is his weakness. Nevertheless, his survival instinct and inherited intelligence drive him forward without hesitation. The greatest surprise comes when it is revealed that the 5th isotope, Elementium, resides within Max Steel, Jefferson's son. This revelation transforms the confrontation into a titanic clash. Elementor unleashes all of his elemental powers, turning the area into an apocalyptic battleground. Hurricanes, wildfires, earthquakes, and torrents of water erupt simultaneously, while the air becomes charged with electricity and dust, threatening to destabilize the entire planet. In the face of such devastation, Max does not falter. He knows that humanity's fate depends on his decision. During the final confrontation, Max Steel activates his turbo action, channeling the power of the Elementium within him. With a precise, direct strike to Elementor's forehead, he triggers the reaction of all 5 isotopes in a colossal fusion. An explosion of energy radiates from the point of impact, completely destroying the creature's physical body and eliminating the villain once and for all, at least for the events covered in the first movie. However, even after this apparent victory, Elementor's story does not end. His vital essence, dispersed into the environment during the explosion, did not vanish completely. Weak and vulnerable, his energy lingers, floating among the elements, leaving open the unsettling possibility that, at some point, this formidable antagonist may return, renewed, and even more dangerous than before. As time passes, Elementor reappears on multiple occasions, each time more ferocious, unpredictable, and with a power that grows exponentially. At first, his presence on the planet was almost imperceptible, a whisper of latent threat, a flash of energy that barely disturbed the environment. Humanity was only beginning to notice his return, and Max Steel found himself in a constant state of alert, aware that this enemy could not be underestimated. However, as his strength increased, Elementor began to manifest in brief episodes of destruction. Localized storms, sudden floods, eruptions of fire and minor seismic movements, signals of a power that lay dormant, yet threatened to awaken fully. Each appearance served as a reminder of the catastrophic potential he harbored, and every partial confrontation left behind a trail of fear and devastation. In a moment of introspection and strategic evolution, Elementor realized that his original plan had a fundamental flaw. Analyzing the limitations of his strength and his previous attempts, he came to the conclusion that, in order to purify the Earth and regenerate it according to his vision, it would not be enough to merely collect and control the 5 isotopes. The most effective way would be to fuse directly with the planet, becoming a living extension of his own elemental energy. However, his weakened state after previous battles and the dispersion of his power prevented him from carrying out such a monumental objective. Frustration mingled with his survival instinct, and he began to devise a more ambitious plan, one in which patience and strategy would be as essential as brute force. Upon discovering that Entech had rebuilt its facilities and developed a special transphasic energy generator, a machine capable of amplifying and stabilizing the power of the isotopes, Elementor decided to infiltrate the site. He advanced with caution, partially fusing with metal and manipulating the environment to eliminate any resistance. His arrival at the laboratory was stealthy yet lethal, leaving nothing but chaos in his wake. Eventually, he confronted Jefferson, Max Steel's father, and entered the generator, reconstructing his body more powerful than ever before, merging his essence with the technology and the isotopes he carried with him. However, the combined effects of the machine and the isotopes produced an unexpected result. When Jefferson ordered Berto to stop the process, they were unable to destroy Elementor. Instead, the unleashed energy fragmented him into 5 distinct entities, each directly linked to one of the isotopes he possessed. In this way, each new Elementor gained absolute control over the elements derived from its respective isotope: water, fire, earth, air, and Elementium. This fragmentation, far from weakening him, turned him into an even greater and more complex threat, as the planet now had to face 5 forces simultaneously, each with its own intelligence and objectives, yet connected by the hive mind of their origin. Each of the 5 Elementors initiated its own plan, seeking the most strategic location to fuse with the Earth. The images unleashed were colossal. Mountains rising under the control of Earth, rivers overflowing under the dominion of water, erupting volcanoes ruled by fire, storms and hurricanes generated by air, and streams of pure energy derived from Elementium, threatening to destabilize the entire planet. Max Steel realized that to contain this threat, he would need to rely on all his cunning and specialized equipment. Thanks to the M7 machine developed by Entech and Max's impeccable strategy, the 5 Elementors were ultimately concentrated in a single location. With surgical precision, Max inserted the M7 machine's core into the head of the metallic Elementor. The shared hive mind among the 5, combined with the conductive properties of metal, allowed all of the Elementors to fuse once again, but this time into a weakened and controllable body. Seizing the opportunity, Entech managed to confine Elementor in a maximum security prison, temporarily stabilizing the threat and preventing the elements from breaking loose again. Throughout the following films, Elementor proved to be a persistent adversary. He escaped on multiple occasions, re-emerging as a recurring threat, and at certain times, even allied himself with other villains to enhance his strength and destructive plans. His constant danger forced authorities to relocate him to a more secure prison, the Moon. There, isolated from the planet, Elementor continued attempting to break free, and on several occasions succeeded, working directly for the villain Toxin, who sought to exploit his elemental mastery for his own purposes. Over time, Elementor partially managed to free himself from Toxin's control. During a confrontation with Max Steel, the hero noticed that although the villain remained extremely powerful, he no longer represented as absolute a danger as before. The upgrades and abilities Max had developed over the years partially balanced the scales, making their battles more strategic and less cataclysmic than in his earliest appearances. Elementor's ultimate fate remains shrouded in mystery. In his last known appearance, he adopted a fiery form within an active volcano, fusing with the lava and becoming an apparently unstoppable threat. With unwavering determination and a carefully executed plan, Max Steel managed to launch a grenade directly into the creature's head. The explosion and the lava consumed the monster, making it vanish completely before the hero's eyes. However, the final signs suggested that Elementor's essence, his dispersed vital energy, still lingered latently in the environment, leaving open the unsettling possibility that one day he could return stronger and more dangerous than ever. Now that we have thoroughly explored the history of the original Elementor in the Max Steel saga and understood his origin, it is time to delve into the complexity of his character, analyzing not only his physical appearance and behavior, but also the extraordinary powers and abilities that make him one of the most fearsome adversaries in the Max Steel universe. Elementor is, without a doubt, a truly unique being of his kind. At first glance, his humanoid structure is combined with reptilian traits that make him both intimidating and fascinating. His base body is robust, muscular, and overflowing with strength. In the absence of any elemental channeling, his scaly skin takes on a neutral grayish tone, yet spread throughout his anatomy are orbs representing the isotope cores that make up his essence. One of these spheres, prominent and luminous, is located on his forehead, like a beacon revealing the titanic energy he harbors. His limbs are equally terrifying. His hands end in sharp claws, capable of tearing through virtually any material, while his legs, inspired by the anatomy of giant frogs, grant him agile, explosive, and deadly movements that combine speed with brute force. At the top of his head, spikes and spines protrude, while his eyes, shifting between shades of yellow, orange, and red, depending on the element he channels, reflect both his emotional state and the power coursing through him. His face is perhaps the most striking feature, an enormous mouth without lips, filled with multiple rows of exposed, razor-sharp teeth that give him a savage, almost prehistoric appearance, a true vision of an elemental predator. The color of his skin and the magnitude of his body vary according to the element he wields. For example, when channeling water, his skin takes on bluish reflections, and his body becomes more fluid and flexible. When controlling fire, a reddish tone and intense heat radiate from him, raising his presence to intimidating levels. Air makes him more ethereal, almost translucent, while earth transforms him into an imposing colossus in brown and green tones with hard, resistant plates resembling natural armor. In addition, 4 distinctive horns emerge from his skull, and 4 spines run along his forearms and the back of his legs, reinforcing his threatening and unique silhouette. His personality is equally complex. Although he inherited traits from his creator, Biocon, Elementor developed his own identity. Unlike Biocon, he is more impulsive, savage, and relies primarily on brute strength and elemental manipulation to overcome any obstacle. Nevertheless, he retains a latent strategic intelligence. He can analyze situations, plan attacks, and quickly adapt to circumstances. After being absorbed by toxin, his intellect is temporarily diminished, making him more instinctive and almost animal-like. In this state, his communication is limited to feral roars, growls, and intimidating gestures. However, even in his most primitive form, he displays cunning. He possesses Jefferson in order to rebuild his body and understands the need to fuse with the planet to fulfill his goal of purification, fully aware of the devastating risk this entails. As for his abilities, Elementor possesses a lethal combination of strength, speed, endurance, and elemental control. By absorbing isotopes, he completely masters the elements they represent, wielding water, fire, earth, air, and complex derivatives such as electricity, metal, or ice with such mastery that he becomes a virtually unbeatable adversary. His superhuman strength is combined with surprising agility, allowing him to face Max Steel and other powerful villains head-on. His physical resilience is equally impressive. He can withstand direct impacts, gunfire, and explosions without suffering significant damage. Thanks to his ability to fuse with elements, he often becomes practically invulnerable, able to absorb attacks and regenerate almost immediately. Although he can be temporarily weakened or captured, he has never been completely destroyed, making him a recurring and ever-present threat. Elementor also retains control over reptiles, a legacy of Biocon. He can manipulate snakes, anacondas, and other reptiles to achieve specific objectives, attack enemies, or act as scouts, as evidenced in the domain of the elements. His senses are highly developed: sight, hearing, and especially smell, allowing him to track and detect opponents even from great distances. In addition, the isotope cores allow him to transform his body at will, increase his size, and even split into multiple independent forms, as seen in Countdown. Despite all this power, Elementor is not invulnerable. His greatest weakness lies in his lack of self-control. When he gives in to brute force or his greed for power, he can be deceived or manipulated, as when Max manages to gather all his forms in one place, or when Toxin betrays him. There are also N-Tech devices designed to limit his power, such as the N7 machine, which partially contains him, or the use of Anti-Elementor, a mineral capable of destabilizing him and damaging his physical body. Even Elementium, while granting him power, can also be used against him, proving that despite his superhuman strength and elemental control, Elementor always has a limit that can be exploited by those clever enough. In summary, Elementor is not just a monster of strength and elements. He is a multifaceted adversary whose design, abilities, and personality make him one of the most memorable and dangerous villains in the Max Steel universe, an enemy whose threat endures and whose shadow stretches far beyond his direct confrontations.